I stepped off the shuttle into the buzzing chaos of the airport, my carry-on gliding smoothly behind me, when the text came through. Your ticket has been canceled. Your family. My fingers froze on the handle of my suitcase. Canceled? For no reason at all? My pulse quickened, but I forced a calmness I didn't feel. The leather of my tote dug softly into my shoulder as I scanned the counter. The woman behind the desk didn't even look up, repeating the company line in a rehearsed monotone. I could feel the warmth of my silk scarf against my neck, a small comfort in the midst of humiliation. Around me, travelers laughed and argued, their wheels rattling, voices echoing off polished tiles. Yet somehow, in the midst of all that noise, my world narrowed to that single, sharp message. I thought of the countless family trips we'd taken, the laughter, the bickering, the supposed fun. And now nothing. Not a word of explanation, just a text. My throat tightened. Pride fought with hurt. I didn't want to cry here, not among strangers and rolling suitcases. Not anymore. I sent a quick reply. Care to explain? And felt the vibration of the phone against my palm. My eyes scanned the airport again, landing on the coffee shop, the row of gates, the flicker of a plane taking off. Somewhere between the caffeine-scented air and the hum of luggage wheels, I realized that this wasn't just about a canceled ticket. It was about control, about them thinking they could dictate my life. I remember that summer vividly, the heat pressing against the windows of our small kitchen, the smell of burnt toast, and the way my mother's eyes narrowed whenever I spoke. I was 22, fresh out of college, full of ideas and ambition, and yet I had never felt more invisible. You can't just decide to move across the country, Hannah, my father said, voice low but sharp. His hands gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. You need us. You're not ready to handle things on your own. I felt my chest tighten. My hands shook as I gripped the edge of my chair. I don't need your approval. I have a plan. I'm capable. My mother sighed, shaking her head, her fingers twisting the silver locket she always wore. We want what's best for you. This is reckless. Her words cut me deeper than I expected. I had always been the good girl, the obedient one who followed every expectation. But in that moment, I felt a spark of something new, a fire I hadn't dared to nurture before. My grandmother, who had been quietly sitting in the corner, watching us, finally spoke. Her voice was soft, almost conspiratorial. Hannah, she said, sometimes you have to step out of the shadow of those who love you. Don't mistake their fear for your weakness. She handed me a small, worn notebook, its edges frayed, pages filled with her handwritten quotes and advice from a lifetime of mistakes and triumphs. This helped me find my path when I felt trapped, she said. Keep it close. It will remind you who you are. I clutched that notebook like a lifeline, feeling a mixture of fear and determination twist in my stomach. That night, after they went to bed, I packed the essentials I could carry and left a note, a mixture of explanation and defiance, on the kitchen counter. For the first time, I was stepping into a world that belonged entirely to me. I didn't know what awaited me, or if I would stumble and fall, but I knew one thing. I was done waiting for permission. I was done being seen but never heard. And somewhere deep in my chest, I felt the first real taste of freedom. The first few months were brutal. I rented a tiny apartment above a laundromat in a neighborhood I barely knew, the walls thin enough to hear arguments from neighbors and the hum of machines below. My grandmother's notebook never left my side. I scribbled ideas in it during the rare, quiet moments, every sentence a reminder that I was building something that was entirely mine. I found a mentor, Margaret Delaney, a woman 10 years older, with streaks of gray hair framing a face carved by experience. She ran a small but thriving marketing firm and saw potential in me that I hadn't even admitted to myself. You have the kind of focus most people spend their whole lives looking for, she said, handing me a stack of client briefs on my first day. If you can survive in this industry, you can survive anywhere. And survive I did. The nights blurred together. Coffee-stained notes, late-night strategy sessions, awkward client calls where I barely kept my nerves under control. There were moments I doubted myself. When a pitch failed, when a client laughed off an idea I poured my soul into, but each small victory lit a fire beneath the doubt. My first successful campaign brought in just enough money to pay the rent and feel a flicker of pride. The first big client contract, a company I had idolized since college, felt like stepping onto a stage I wasn't supposed to be allowed on. I learned the art of quiet growth. Social media? Minimal. Family updates? Sparse. I couldn't risk them seeing the woman I was becoming before she was fully formed. And so, I worked in silence, letting every decision, every win, be mine alone. By the end of the second year, my little firm had grown. I hired my first assistant, then a small team. I walked into rooms that once intimidated me, commanding attention, my voice confident, my ideas respected. I decorated my office with touches of personality, framed quotes from my grandmother's notebook, a vase of fresh flowers on Mondays, a small sculpture I'd won in a local competition. It wasn't flashy to the casual observer, but every detail was a testament to my journey. I watched my bank account grow quietly, each deposit a silent victory. I had become financially independent, strategically powerful, and most importantly, I had built a life I didn't need anyone's permission to enjoy. I felt the thrill of knowing that one day, when they looked for me, they would find a version of Hannah Blake they could never have imagined. And in those moments of reflection, I often turned to my grandmother's notebook, running my fingers over the worn edges. Every word she had written, every lesson she had shared, had become a brick in the foundation of who I was now, unshakable, determined, quietly unstoppable. The knock on my office door was firm but hesitant, and immediately I knew who it was. My mother's delicate voice, tinged with worry. "Hannah, can we come in?" I smiled faintly, gesturing for them to enter. My father followed, eyebrows furrowed, carrying the same sense of expectation that had haunted me for years. And my younger brother, Liam, shifted nervously behind them, his gaze darting around the room as if searching for a clue to what he might find. They stepped inside, and for a moment, the only sound was the faint hum of the air conditioning. I let them take in the space. My office was calm and elegant, not ostentatious, but clearly a reflection of achievement. Expensive, framed photographs of projects I had spearheaded lined the walls. A sleek, polished desk bore a single, carefully stacked set of files. The sunlight through the large windows highlighted a view of the city I had built my life in, and a vase of fresh orchids on the corner added a touch of warmth. My mother's hand instinctively went to her chest, her eyes wide. I didn't expect. I raised a hand, letting the silence stretch for just a heartbeat longer. "You didn't expect what?" I asked softly, letting my voice hold just enough calm authority to make them pause. My father cleared his throat, attempting to compose himself, but his gaze kept flicking to my desk, to the neatly framed awards, to the city view that spoke louder than words ever could. I walked around the desk, my heels soft against the polished hardwood. "I didn't need your permission to build my life," I said, voice steady measured. "I didn't need approval to pursue my dreams. I didn't need you to believe in me when I knew my own worth." Their mouths opened and closed, fumbling for words, but nothing came out. "I am the CEO of my own firm," I continued, letting each word land with quiet power. "I have clients across the country. I own property. I am financially independent. And I have built everything from scratch, without a single hand from any of you." My mother's face drained of color. My father's hands tightened into fists. Liam's jaw fell slightly, eyes wide with a mix of awe and guilt. I placed a hand on my grandmother's notebook, which sat on the corner of my desk. "Everything I am, every step I took, was guided by the wisdom and faith of those who truly believed in me," I said softly. "Not by those who tried to hold me back." They took it all in, silent, stunned, the weight of their expectations and assumptions crashing down around them. And in that silence, I realized something profound. I no longer needed to defend myself. I no longer needed their approval. The life I had built, the woman I had become, spoke louder than any argument, any apology, any explanation. Finally, my mother whispered, her voice trembling. Hannah, we didn't know. I let her words hang there. I didn't need to rush to forgive or to justify. They had arrived expecting a version of me they could manipulate, and instead, they met a woman they had underestimated her entire life. And for the first time, I felt the sweet, undeniable power of being completely, unapologetically myself. I let the silence linger for a moment, letting them absorb everything. Their disbelief, their guilt, their shame. It all weighed in the air like thick velvet. Then I spoke, my voice calm, deliberate, unshakable. I am willing to support you, I said, letting each word land. But things will not go back to how they were. Not now, not ever. If you want a place in my life, it must be on terms that respect the woman I have become and the life I've built. My mother's lips trembled. Hannah, No, I interrupted gently but firmly. This is not a negotiation. It's a condition. A chance for all of us to grow. I turned to my father first. You must let go of control. You spent decades trying to steer my life because you thought you knew best. You don't. Your job now is to support, not dictate. Learn to listen without judgment. He swallowed hard, shoulders stiff, but I saw the flicker of recognition in his eyes. My mother's gaze softened, but I continued. And you, Mom, you must stop treating love as conditional. Stop questioning ambition or independence. Your role is to encourage, to celebrate, not to limit or scold. Liam, who had been quiet, shifted uneasily. What about me? He asked. You, I said, meeting his eyes, need to pursue your own dreams without hiding behind comfort or convenience. Stop comparing yourself to me or anyone else. Build a life you can be proud of. I glanced at the grandmother's notebook on my desk. We all need guidance, and sometimes that guidance comes from the right people, the right lessons, I said softly. I hope this will be yours. Not fear, not guilt, but respect. Compassion paired with responsibility. Their eyes met mine, a mixture of shock, tentative hope, and, surprisingly, relief. For the first time, I felt a shift, not just of power, but of possibility. I wasn't punishing them. I was guiding them, holding them accountable, giving them a chance to truly grow. I could see it in their expressions, the realization that they couldn't manipulate me, the awareness that their old patterns had no place in my world anymore. And yet, in that same moment, I felt the warmth of connection reemerging, fragile but real. I care about you, I said quietly. I always have. But care is not enabling, and love is not control. You want a relationship with me? This is what it will take. Change, responsibility, and respect for who I am and who we all can become. For the first time in years, I saw them listening, not just hearing, but truly understanding. And in that room, I felt the balance shift. Not vengeance, not triumph over weakness, but power tempered with compassion. I realized that the strongest kind of influence isn't about dominance. It's about showing people the path, holding the line, and letting them decide whether they're willing to walk it. Weeks passed, and I watched the changes unfold in quiet satisfaction. My father stopped checking in with thinly veiled critiques, instead asking thoughtful questions about projects, genuinely curious rather than controlling. My mother started celebrating ambition, encouraging Liam to explore his passions without judgment. And Liam finally enrolled in the art program he'd always dreamed about, a shy smile lighting his face every time he spoke of his progress. It wasn't instant perfection. There were moments of tension, old habits slipping through, voices raised or eyes clouded with doubt. But the difference now was that the framework was set. Boundaries existed, respect existed, and love existed, without conditions. I often returned to the worn notebook my grandmother had given me, running my fingers over its frayed edges. Her words felt like a whisper in the room, reminding me that every choice, every risk, every triumph had led me here. I realized that the notebook wasn't just guidance. It was a mirror of who I had always been capable of becoming. Sitting in my office one quiet morning, Sunlight streaming across the polished hardwood floor, I reflected on the journey. The canceled ticket, the family trips that felt like chains, the doubts and fears. They all had a purpose. They had pushed me to claim my life fully, fiercely, unapologetically. I had learned that strength isn't measured in how much you can endure silently, but in how boldly you can define yourself despite the expectations and limitations of others. I had learned that love isn't about control. It's about respect, compassion, and shared growth. And in that quiet reflection, I smiled, letting the city hum beneath the windows, the orchids on my desk leaning toward the light. I whispered to no one in particular, yet as if the whole world could hear me. I am enough, I am unstoppable, and I will never apologize for being the woman I was meant to be. And with that, I felt complete. Not because the past had changed, but because I had. Because I had built a life that belonged entirely to me, and in doing so, I had shown those I loved and myself what it truly means to rise.